Coming at number 5, we've got the satanic idol. Now, Satan is usually quite a controversial figure. In the past, any mention of the name would have been associated with something terrible, especially as satanic panic swept the nation. Why won't anyone think of the children, right? We love to assign weird moral values to stuff to ensure our political weight can be thrown around, but I'm getting off topic. These days, the jury is out on Satan. Many folks love the guy and worship him as ardently as anyone else would worship their deities. Some say he's a more forgiving figure than plenty of other gods and demigods. However, this idol doesn't seem to be associated with that end of the satanic spectrum. This one comes from the bowels of hell and brings with it misfortune and terror, or so they say. Let's take a look at this interesting oddity. With a misshapen horned head, piercing blue eyes, and a strange, unnaturally slim body, this doesn't necessarily look like the powerful demon most folks would assume is Satan. Artists can take liberties with the things they create, so don't write it off simply based on its looks. Apparently, a young hunter had been scavenging through the woods in Connecticut when he stumbled upon this cursed idol. He didn't really know what to do with it, but he took it along just as well. Soon after coming into possession of this horned artifact, he ran into an old man in dark robes, one telling tales of doom and horror. This, of course, spooked the hunter, who discussed this interaction with his friends. Eventually, after some sleepless nights and anxiety, he was put in contact with the Warrens, who came by to evaluate the idol. They deemed it haunted indeed and took it off the poor guy's hands. I'm sure he was very glad to be free of it. Ed and Lorraine strapped the devil thing in and brought it back to their museum where it still remains. So if you ever get a hankering for some devil worship or really want to look into some Gollum-esque blue eyes, you know where to go. Just be careful. That cloaked man in the woods is said to have been a worshipper of Satan, using the idol in dark and terrible rituals. I'm sure it's safe in the museum, but who knows. Coming in number 4, we've got the toy monkey. What is it about old school toys that makes them so creepy? Like, at some point in history, every single toy maker decided it was time to stop making them look that way and move on to much cuter, cuddlier, cooler, and overall less frightening things. Maybe tastes changed, or folks just collectively woke up to the fact that they were letting their kids play with nightmare objects, but regardless of the reason, I'm glad we've left these designs in the past. Dredging up these figures makes for some good spooky times though, right? Take this toy monkey for example. Would you buy your kids something like this these days? I'd wager no, and for good reason. Not only is it unsettling to look at, plenty of similar monkeys have been featured in the spookiest of scenes across Hollywood, but there's a lot of dark energy imbued in this particular monkey. The one at the Warrens Museum is said to carry a terrible curse. Hell, it was even featured in Annabelle Comes Home. So what does a little monkey have to do to earn such a reputation? Well, this one seems to stalk people, torment them, and then kill them. Oh no. Imagine this thing suddenly appearing in your life one day, then as time went on it started popping up in places you know you didn't leave it. Little monkey cymbals might be heard crashing in the middle of the night, and disembodied shuffling can keep you from sleeping. All that's creepy, but it's still just a toy, right? Hold up. Did its eyes just glow? That is some monkey business I want no part of. But hey, at least this one in particular is locked away and not to be recirculated into the general population of antique monkey toys. Well, for now anyway. Coming in number 3, we've got the Shadow Doll. Now, we've all got a particular cursed doll in mind when it comes to the Warrens, and now she's the star of a major motion picture franchise, so it seems that she's always gonna come in first. But there is another doll at the museum that should elicit at least the same amount of fear. That's right, I'm talking about the Shadow Doll. This thing is downright butt ugly. Like, Annabelle as an OG Raggedy Annie is kinda creepy, and they had to make sure they punched up the creepiness with some porcelain features and unnerving eyes for the movie. But if they made a movie featuring the Shadow Doll as is, I think they might actually have to make it less creepy. For real. I don't know if big movie theater chains would allow something like this on their screens. Feels like something out of a snuff film, maybe a low-budget exploitation flick. Nobody's looking at this and saying, oh yeah, I want to watch a whole movie based on this thing. Worse yet, the Shadow Doll seems to carry a much more terrible curse than most. Plenty of cursed dolls require you to be in the same room as them in order for the worst of the effects to hit you, but the Shadow Doll just needs you to view a picture of it to generate risk. Just looking at it means there's a chance it'll visit you in your dreams and kill you there, Freddy Krueger style. And based on looks, I don't think it would make it fun like Freddy does. It would just be brutal and upsetting. Goodness gracious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Pearls of Death. These are known for their outrageously dangerous powers. They might just look like a nice set of pearls waiting to be adorned by the fanciest of folk, but be warned, the glamour is not worth the price. And I'm not talking about how much you pay for them. No, it is not money that these pearls want, it is your life. Owners of this particular string of aquatic orbs have complained time and time again of the necklace constricting around their throat and choking them. According to the first woman to adorn herself with this luxurious item, she felt as if she was being strangled as soon as she put them on. She attempted to take them off, but was unsuccessful. Panicked, she rushed out to request help, and it took multiple people yanking on the string to finally set her free. Since then, people have been very reluctant to wear these pearls. Some believe that a Satanist or black magic worshipper cursed the necklace before it was given to the unfortunate woman, kinda like the opposite of a holy person blessing an object. How fun. I wonder if we got a priest in there, whether they could cancel out the curse. I suppose not too many people are willing to test whether or not the pearls are still strangling. And finally, at number 1, we've got Annabelle, the Warren Museum tenant who needs no introduction, the mistress of the glass case, the shadow clawer of college boyfriends, the mega million movie star herself, Annabelle. What a classic cursed doll. Honestly, I'm sure the museum could liquidate most of their other objects and still have a similar crowd come by if they just kept Annabelle. Legendary. She looks a little different in real life than in the movies, although I'm sure this is true of any movie star. We've already discussed her Raggedy Annie appearance, especially compared to the more porcelain figure in the flicks. However, this doll makes up for a lack of spooky looks with a plethora of terrifying tales. After being gifted to a nursing student, Annabelle started acting strange. She'd move around the house on her own and leave little notes to the girls living there. Eventually, she would attack and strangle the boyfriend of one of the students, leaving them desperate for help. The Warrens soon arrived and whisked the doll away. However, they seemed to know just how wretched and terrible she could be, and as such, they locked Annabelle away in a holy box. This seems to keep her at bay, but who knows? Someday she could break free once again. I'm sure there are plenty more extra cursed and haunted objects held at the Warrens Occult Museum, but today we've only got time for 5.
Coming in at number 5, we have Dr. Jack Kevorkian Death Van, also known as the Deathmobile. Dr. Jack Kevorkian's van was a place many people spent their last moments alive. The 1968 Volkswagen van was where Dr. Kevorkian carried out as many as 130 assisted suicides in the 90s, and has become a piece of history. However, at the time, the pathologist was met with controversy and public criticism for his taboo work on physician-assisted suicide with terminally ill patients. He spent 8 years in prison for second-degree murder because of this, but is often viewed as a pioneer in the medical field and as an activist. His impact was so great that HBO released a drama called You Don't Know Jack, in which Al Pacino won an Emmy and a Golden Globe for his portrayal of the controversial doctor. Over the year, the death van has seen many different owners. Zach purchased this van for $32,500 from American Jewelry and Loan. When the Detroit pawn shop first bought the vehicle, it was actually featured on an episode of a TV show. Apparently, Long Island medium Teresa Caputo also passed by the van in their warehouse and said she felt something there. Visitors of Zach's Haunted Museum can peek inside the Dr. Jack Kevorkian's death van and see the exact spot where many people died. Coming in at number 4, we have Ed Gein's cauldron. This is certainly one of the more gruesome relics on display at Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum, and it's believed to have belonged to the butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. He's known for not only committing 2 murders, but mutilating corpses and fashioning items from human skin. Some of this morbid creation include masks made from real human faces, a human skin lampshade, and a female skin suit. Although his kill count doesn't technically classify him as a serial killer, he still served as inspiration for several fictional serial killers, like Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. This cauldron is said to have been a place for Ed Gein to boil body parts in, but its authenticity is largely unknown. It was auctioned off in 2015 by a man named Dan McIntyre. He claimed to have inherited it from his grandmother, who bought it in 1958 at Gein's estate sale following his arrest. That's bleak as The highest bidder was Zach, purchasing the little pot for $2,800. At the time, Dan said he was happy to be rid of it, as it was the source of strange phenomena. I mean, I wouldn't want that in my home. Now, Ed Gein's cauldron calls Zach's Haunted Museum home, where it is said to radiate negative energy. Coming in at number 3, we have the Demon House Staircase. The original staircase from the Gary Demon House is said to be so haunted that construction crews walked off the job and refused to come back after its installation. Set back in a dimly lit corner, the wooden staircase rests on a layer of dirt extracted from the location famous for demonic activity. The Demon House was located in Gary, Indiana, and was unfortunately home to the Ammons family. It was said to be a portal to hell, and the demons seemed to emanate from beneath the stairs. The same stairs displayed at Zach's museum. There were reports of demonic possessions, a child levitating, and many other disturbing events. The family's matriarch, LaToya Ammons, had to undergo multiple exorcisms as a result. It was so bad that even the local police department and social services were convinced of its purported hauntedness. There are things in this world that we will never fully understand, like why Zack decided to buy the home plagued by demonic entities. He did shoot his documentary Demon House there, where he investigated the haunting. It must have left an impact on him because the house has since been demolished and the stairs continue to haunt Zack's museum. Coming in at number 2, we have the Devil's Rocking Chair. This sinister chair is linked to a very famous investigation done by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and its story serves as the plot for the Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It. Zack actually purchased this chair for $67,000 just hours before the death of Lorraine Warren. Ooh, creepy. The Devil's Rocking Chair was the site of the infamous exorcism of David Glatzel, who was allegedly possessed by a demon. The 11-year-old at the time was being tormented by a man-like demon who resembled a beast with sharp jagged teeth, horns, and hoofs. As the haunting progressed, the chair was said to be under the demon's power, and David would often see the beast sitting in it. Ed and Lorraine performed numerous exorcisms on David in that very chair. The final exorcism was a success, and the demon was expelled from David right into his sister's boyfriend, who killed his landlord shortly after. He pled not guilty due to demonic possession, a first in American history, citing that the devil made me do it. It didn't work, by the way. In 2019, the Devil's Rocking Chair's exhibit actually had to be shut down because it was doing its job a little too well. 6 different people shared the same disturbing experience with the chair. They all had bouts of uncontrollable crying, and one even collapsed above it. The museum having adverse effects on visitors isn't anything new, with ambulances having to be called in the past, but this was the first time in the museum's history that an exhibit had to be shut down. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Dybbuk box. In the number 1 spot is known as the most haunted object in the world, the notorious dybbuk box. According to Jewish mythology, a dybbuk is a malevolent spirit that's said to haunt and possess the living, and the dybbuk box is home to the evil entity. This wine cabinet is so haunted that it actually served as inspiration for the horror film The Possession. The dybbuk box first became a sensation when it was listed on eBay, along with an extensive ghost story attached to it. After some owner hopping, it came into Zack's possession. Shortly after the dybbuk box arrived in the museum, holes allegedly began to appear around the haunted cabinet. A downtown Las Vegas marketing executive also apparently witnessed a black-cloaked apparition pass through the exhibit's door while doing a private tour with Zack. This haunted relic is no joke. Even Post Malone was apparently cursed by the dybbuk when he visited the museum with Zack himself. After touching Zack's shoulder, who was resting his hand on the box, Post Malone had a streak of terrible luck. In less than a month, his private jet was forced to make an emergency landing when 2 tires blew out. His house was broken into by armed robbers, and then he got into a car crash.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the organ. Thankfully, it's not an internal organ or anything like that, although, to be honest, I'm not so sure that would be any more creepy than this haunted musical instrument. Organs always tend to have a spooky sound to them, whether it's that classic bit from Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, or some old hymnals echoing through an empty church. The pipes and keys combine to create spine-chilling music more often than not. It's a classic sound used to elicit fear and atmosphere in all sorts of different environments. So of course, the Warrens brought one back to the museum. It's not a grand affair, definitely not a pipe organ or anything close to one in size and scope. However, it does make up for a general lack of volume and dynamics with an array of haunted energy. The main thing that tends to set people off about this musical instrument is the fact that it likes to play itself. It's not a player piano, nor is there any sort of mechanism inside that would suggest that it was ever meant to make music without the help of a musician. But when the clock strikes 9 p.m., or the museum's apparent witching hour, this keyed instrument starts to play. I'm sure the first person to discover this detail was sufficiently spooked. Playing on its own isn't the only oddity associated with the organ. It's also known to cause anomalous things to happen to folks who play it. One might see a strange man standing beside the stool as they play, or maybe they'll have dreams full of haunting music for a while. If you go in and hit a few keys on this organ, maybe even sit down and play a fugue, all sorts of unfortunate events may be in your near future. After the organ was retrieved from the supposedly haunted house of a reverend, it was placed in the museum. Interestingly enough, no anomalous activity was reported before it was brought back. However, the Warrens were no slouches when it came to decorating, and soon enough the organ was covered in all sorts of other interesting oddities. Now, this idea I came up with on my own, so don't take it as a fact or ask me to cite anything, but what if the things the Warrens placed upon the organ caused it to become haunted? Maybe the curses dwelling inside of those objects came out and played the organ themselves. Food for thought, for sure. Coming in number 4, we've got human skulls. Speaking of objects that may or may not be cursed but also make for great decorations, the Warrens had quite the collection of human head tops. The pearly white bone matter that makes up the shield for our most important organ. That's right, plenty of human skulls in the museum. And not just for archaeological and medical purposes, these were skulls supposedly used in different satanic rituals. Oh boy. There is one in particular that stands out thanks to its interesting coloration and decorations. The eye sockets are painted bright pink and really pop, and some of the teeth are a yellowy gold, and there is a large star adorning most of the skull's forehead. It's placed on an ornate stand among a plethora of other spooky knickknacks. I guess I shouldn't really be comparing a human skull to a knickknack, but here we are. Now, like I said before, the human skulls accumulated by the Warrens were supposedly used in satanic rituals quite a few times. I can't really elaborate on exactly what that would look like, but the fact that they were there means that it's possible the skulls are now cursed. The demons contacted during said rituals could have left some sort of residual energy in and around the skulls, especially because they did originate from humans. Folks have been terrified of satanic rituals for ages, often using them as shorthand for scary, morally depraved activities. We might not be able to figure out exactly what happened with these skulls, but they definitely hold some sway over folks who might visit the museum. It's morbid, it's creepy, and it smacks of the paranormal. Just hope that this kind of thing never ends up happening to your skull. Or you know what, maybe you'd prefer that the top of your head ends up in a museum. That's one way to stick around for a while, right? Coming in at number 3, we've got the haunted music box. Just another classic spooky object. Where would we be today without spring-wound machines that generate tinkly renditions of famous tunes? I feel like every 10 movies or so there's a shot of a haunted music box. Maybe that's a thing of the past at this point, but we do know that the Perron family dealt with a whole lot of nonsense stemming from a music box in the first Conjuring movie. Some things that appear in the Hollywood flicks don't actually exist in the real world, and they're just there to add some intrigue. The samurai suit in the Feely Mealy game were a couple examples of that, but we'll leave it at that for now. We'll focus back on the music box instead. After playing a big role in the exorcism of Bathsheba, it gained some wicked notoriety. Folks who had seen the movie assumed that this object was cursed in exactly the same way. That's not really the case, but it is fun to imagine, right? Music boxes are classic vessels for curses, especially thanks to the general creepy vibe the music can give off. How many cheap horror creations make use of a distorted music box song and some creepy childish laughter? Actually, keep the number to yourself, I already know it's way up there. Coming in number 2, we've got the white dress. Another urban legend staple, white dresses tend to show up in ghost stories often. Murdered brides, young women gone too soon, mothers who outlived their children, the works. It's hard to pin down where the phenomenon started, but we do know that it's timeless and effective. So of course, there's a haunted white wedding dress at the Warren Occult Museum. I'd be disappointed if there wasn't. In the Conjuring franchise, this dress is said to compel any who wear it to kill their fiancé. However, that's just more movie magic. There's no such tale actually associated with the museum. However, they do display a bridal gown, veil and all, and there is a supposed story that goes along with it. It's meant to represent the White Lady of Union Graveyard in Connecticut. A classic urban legend that we've definitely touched on here before, it's the tale of an unfortunate soul who roams the roads at night, causing accidents and freaking out motorists. Apparently one time she even materialized and put a dent in someone's fender. Unfortunately, the white dress in the museum isn't actually from the White Lady or anything related to her. It's just meant to represent the legend, add a little bit of class to the joint. Because who doesn't love looking at a pretty white dress? And finally, at number 1, we've got the conjuring mirror. To cap things off, we'll talk about a particularly spooky reflective surface, the conjuring mirror. No relation to the actual Conjuring films though, so far anyway. This is one that has a truly terrifying story attached to it. The idea of mirrors as portals to other worlds is well documented, with different cultures around the world coming to similar conclusions about these shiny planes. People often see things they wish they hadn't in a mirror, which is especially true of the one at the Warren Occult Museum. It's said that if you look into it for long enough, you'll start to see conjured spirits. In fact, the mirror apparently does its best to conjure these spirits upon the user. The story goes that Ed and Lorraine came into possession of it after its previous owner stared into the mirror for weeks on end. For a while nothing happened, but eventually it conjured up a series of faces and figures so gruesome and horrifying the man lost his mind entirely. He was sent to a mental institution and the mirror was sent to the Warrens. Since then, people have looked into the mirror, but definitely not for weeks at a time. I wonder what would happen if someone replicated the experiment.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Tallman family's bunk beds. So the item itself doesn't sound very scary because it's just a bunk bed, but it was the source of intense terror and trauma for the Tallman family. In 1987, Ali and Debbie Tallman bought a bunk bed from a secondhand store and brought it to their home in Horicon, Wisconsin. They stored the bed in the basement until one day they decided to move it upstairs. From the moment someone slept in the bed, an evil entity was unleashed into their home and all hell broke loose. Their children, who were usually healthy, began falling sick for no apparent reason. The radio in the bedroom with the haunted bunk bed would turn on. The kids reported seeing a menacing old woman with long black hair and a fiery glow. Doors slammed open and they heard disembodied voices from empty rooms. Strange paranormal occurrences were running rampant. As the haunting intensified, the Tallmans enlisted their pastor for help with the dire situation. The pastor said that he felt the presence of evil and blessed their home. This was to no avail, and the Tallmans unfortunately continued to be tormented. In a fit of frustration, Alan shouted at the entity to pick on him and not his children. Challenge accepted because shortly after he witnessed the orange glow of fire inside his garage with red eyes staring at him through the window. Then one night while sleeping in the kids' room to protect them, a fog manifested out of the floor. It morphed into flames with green eyes and a voice spoke out of it telling him, "You're dead." Enough was enough and the Tallmans fled their home. The bunk bed was then buried in a landfill so no one would have to go through what the Tallman family did. The house still stands today and reports of paranormal activity ceased once the bunk bed was removed. Coming in at number 4, the Basano vase. Most people wouldn't mind being gifted a vase from Italy, especially one cast from silver in the 15th century, but the Basano vase is said to be extremely haunted and cursed. The vase was apparently gifted to an Italian bride on her wedding night who lived in a small village close to Napoli. Her big day was ruined, however, when she was found dying on the floor with the vase in her hand, swearing to get revenge. The vase was then passed down to people in her family. With each new owner came another mysterious death, so the family locked it away. In 1988, the Basano vase was found with a note inside that read, "Beware, this vase brings death." Ignoring the warning, the vase was then sold at an auction. 3 months later, the new owner was dead. The owner after that died 2 months later. After a string of mysterious deaths, the police decided to bury the vase somewhere no one would find it. It's said to still be hidden away even today. Whether the vase was cursed or it's the angry spirit of the bride, that's up for debate. All I know is that I'm glad this haunted relic is no longer in circulation. Coming in at number 3, Robert the Doll. Residing behind a glass barrier in a Florida museum is Robert the Doll. This little guy is one of the most haunted dolls in the world, and I think we can all agree that he's absolutely terrifying. While his little sailor outfit is cute, his worn and torn face is something only a mother could love. He's so haunted that he's said to cause car accidents, broken bones, divorces, and a plethora of other misfortunes. If you dare disrespect the doll by taking its picture without permission, he will curse you. This is why his exhibit is littered with letters from people begging for forgiveness. But before the century-old doll was combined to a life behind a protective barrier, he belonged to Robert Eugene Otto, who went by the name Gein. Gein's grandfather bought him the doll in Germany and the pair were inseparable. Strange things started happening. Gein began having full-blown conversations with the doll. Many nights the family would be woken up by his screams, only to find a frightened Gein surrounded by overturned furniture and scattered toys. He insisted that Robert did it. Things would move around the house and stuff would break. Again, Gein insisted that Robert did it. His parents were skeptical but also unnerved by the strange events going on in the house. Even people who passed by the Otto house in Key West, Florida, claimed to see the doll peering out the window at them. Although Robert the Doll is now locked away in a museum, his apparent ability to curse people is still strong as ever. Those brave enough to visit him are urged to be careful or else they might find themselves cursed by the haunted doll. Coming in at number 2, we have dybbuk box. Known as the most haunted object in the world, this vintage wine cabinet is locked in a glass box at Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum. In fact, you have to be over 18 and sign a waiver just to set eyes on it. In Jewish folklore, a dybbuk is a malicious spirit with the ability to possess living people and use them for evil. These spirits can be trapped inside of a box to prevent this, which is why the dybbuk box is supposedly home to an evil entity. The dybbuk box was listed on eBay several years ago and it became a sensation. The seller, Kevin Manis, claimed to have purchased it from the estate of a woman who survived a World War II concentration camp. The woman's granddaughter, who was absolutely terrified of the box, warned him that her grandmother said it held the spirit of a dybbuk. Following his purchase, Kevin experienced a series of terrifying unexplained events. He would have nightmares of an old hag who would brutally attack him, and then wake up covered in bruises. His mother also apparently suffered a stroke after opening the dybbuk box. He decided to get rid of it for obvious reasons, and it eventually ended up in the hands of Zach Bagans for his museum. Museum goers can look at the dybbuk box but can't touch it, and for good reasons. Post Malone did a private tour of the museum with Zach and found himself cursed by the evil spirit. Zach removed the protective glass around the haunted wine cabinet and decided to place his hands directly on it. Post Malone then touched Zach's shoulder, and that's all it took. In less than a month, his private jet was forced to make an emergency landing, his house was broken into by armed robbers, and then he got into a car accident. Safe to say that is one haunted relic that should stay locked away forever. And finally, in at number 1 we have Annabelle. In the number 1 spot is a doll so haunted, so notorious, and so creepy that she's had 3 horror movies made about her. The real Annabelle isn't actually a wide-eyed porcelain doll, but an innocent-looking Raggedy Ann who lives at Ed and Lorraine Warren's occult museum. But don't be fooled by her unassuming look, she's considered extremely haunted and dangerous. So haunted in fact that she permanently resides in a wooden box with a copy of the Lord's Prayer and a label reading, "Warning, positively do not open." In true Hollywood fashion, Annabelle's origin story was altered quite a bit. The real story of Annabelle started with 2 nurses who lived together as roommates in the 70s, when one was gifted the doll by her mother. Soon after, the girls began noticing that Annabelle would move on her own, finding her sitting in a different position and even in different rooms. The haunting escalated when they found parchment paper with the words "Help me" written in crayon scattered around their place. The girls didn't even own parchment paper. After more unexplained events, they decided to contact a medium who told them that the spirit of a 6 or 7-year-old girl named Annabelle died in the area around their apartment complex and was living inside of the doll. Things only got worse, and Annabelle became violent with Lou, a boyfriend of one of the nurses. He claimed to have been strangled by the doll while sleeping and even suffered 7 claw-like slashes on his body after throwing her across the room on a separate occasion. Annabelle is known to be violent with people who dare to taunt her. Ed Warren believes that the doll is responsible for at least 1 death, that of a museum goer. According to the late paranormal investigator, a young man and his girlfriend visited the occult museum. Stupidly, the man decided to mock Annabelle by tapping on the glass and telling her to scratch him like he scratched Lou. The couple was kicked out and the man died approximately 3 hours later when he lost control of his motorcycle and hit a tree. Although the Raggedy Ann doll is locked away behind a wooden box, complete with the Lord's Prayer, it seems that Annabelle's evil prowess simply cannot be contained.